I want to talk about the books that I'm reading. I just finished Acing the System Design Interview, which that was a good book if you're looking for a book that I think that does a good job overviewing a lot of concepts like queues, services, load balancers, logging, caching, just really the basics of system design. But I think it does it. I think it does it well. Um, there's a lot of books on this topic, but I think that this one was a good one. I've read mixed reviews about it, but I think it does its job. And if you're looking for system design content, I think it's harder because a lot of it relies on best practice, which I think best practice sometimes is hard to find kind of in like the web of information that we have out there. Because sometimes reading documentation is one thing, but sometimes documentation doesn't really tell you what the best practice is of incorporating whatever the documentation is telling you how to write to begin with, if that makes sense. Another book I'm reading is Docker in Action, which is another Manning Publishing book. I'm about, I'd say about like a quarter of the way through. It's pretty good so far. It's super network heavy in the beginning, which I'm not. I don't know if you all are into networking, but I'm not. I try to stay as far away from networking as I can. I just don't find that stuff interesting at all, like IP addresses, all that. I don't really like that stuff. I'd prefer if somebody else did that, and I don't really have to think about it. But I'm in that part in Docker talking about like port forwarding and stuff like that. But I'm really trying to get to the chapter on Docker files. So it's kind of like getting you familiar with the all the Docker command line arguments and API. But I really, to be honest with you, I really just want to get to the Docker file because knowing how to write and all like a Docker file and all the nuances is becoming a more and more important skill in software engineering. Um, so I'm excited about that book. Again, I'm only about a quarter of the way through. I don't know when I'm going to finish that. I'm going a little bit slower through that one again, just because I'm not super into networking, but I feel like I need to read about it just to stay up on it. But excited about getting to the Docker file chapter. I think that'll be good. Another book I have coming in is Web Scalability for the Startup Engineer. I don't really know what to expect with this one. I heard it referenced in the Acing the System Design interview book. So this one should hopefully add some context for some of the things that were brought up in Acing the System Design interview. But this book had really good reviews, so I'm really curious about what it truly covers. So again, very excited. I'll be making kind of like updates and hopefully, well, I tell you what my hope is that I'm going to be able to like incorporate a lot of what going to hopefully read about in that book into our system design series here. But we'll see. Another book that's coming in is RabbitMQ in Action. I've already read RabbitMQ in depth, and that went really, really deep into the advanced messaging queue? No, advanced message queuing protocol, I think. AMQP went really in depth into that, as well as RabbitMQ. And I don't know what the difference is between RabbitMQ and Action. I'm hoping that it's a little bit more like implementation heavy, is my hope. But I'm very excited to read this book. I've been wanting to read it for a while, especially after I read RabbitMQ in depth. So hopefully the combination of those two books will hopefully I'll get a really, really solid understanding of RabbitMQ, because it's a super powerful technology. Queues are like a core piece of any system design. If you look up like practically any system design diagram that's out there on the internet, you'll probably see a queue incorporated in it. And so knowing how to interact with that, but knowing all the nuances of like the protocol and also the different protocols available depending on what you're doing. Because if you have a mobile app, you may use a different protocol to connect to the queue than if you're using a web service. So there's a lot of different things. So I'm very excited for that. So hopefully there will be more. Well, I know there will be more RabbitMQ content on this channel. I posted that one about how to use headers exchange, a how to use a headers exchange in RabbitMQ. That one, it's hard to make content on that because it's very specific. It's almost it's almost encroaching upon like the it's becoming too specific to really make like a decent video, but it's a good topic because it's a very there's like a really specific use case for it, and I think it's applicable because if you have that use case, there's not a ton of like content covering headers exchanges. There's a few things, but just being familiar with it and having that the possibility of being able to use it, I think is cool. And hopefully, yeah, it's hard to make content on that, and I see that reflected in the views because I don't really know how to title those other than like literally how to use headers, how to use a header exchange in RabbitMQ with mass transit in .NET. Like I don't know what else to call that really. So um, we'll see. I'm trying to figure out how to go about creating these system design videos because I'm trying to obviously make them very specific and very practical with code examples. Um, but I'm trying to find the right balance between discussion, practical examples, showing all the code, and doing a demo. Those things have to be separated because it would be just too long of a video to do all of them in one. But I'm trying to find the right balance, and I think that after we after I kind of read these other books, hopefully I'll be able to think through some things a little more and try to get a good rhythm, I guess, going for these system design videos again because it takes a lot of time, right, to make not only the example to show on the channel, but also draw up the diagram and bring up all these concepts to it's a little more challenging. It's obviously more challenging than making these kind of discussion videos because other than sitting down and talking about these, I'm not really there's not a lot more that has to go into these. The system design series videos, those are a lot more in depth, especially the ones with code because I have to first write the code, but I also have to research what I'm trying to do, and the research actually takes the longest because once you start delving into those very niche topics and categories, finding the resources to, you know, set that up can be challenging. Even looking up how to use headers exchanges with in .NET with Mass Transit is, it just you have to look up a whole subset of documentation there and then figure out the configuration. Like I had to look up, okay, where do I set the custom headers? And then where do I add the check inside RabbitMQ? And I saw some online even there was confusion about what that arguments box was for, because header exchanges are not as popular as maybe just using a routing key with a topic exchange. So it's stuff like that. Like it's a little bit more complicated, but I think that's the part that really is interesting is the more research heavy stuff because I think that is really where you're able to design something that is unique and that works well, but also is starting to just anything that allows you to offer a different solution to maybe a problem that hasn't been fully solved or something like that. But anyway, those are the books that I have those books coming in. There was one book that I haven't gotten to really this topic yet, but it's memory management in .NET. Um, that's a massive topic. But I found one book that I've read. The author wrote a microservice patterns in .NET Core book that I read. I think I've actually read that multiple times, and that was about a year ago. And it's an outstanding book. And I actually um, got it from the library, so I actually don't have a physical copy. But it's one of those books that I'm kind of tempted to buy a physical copy just to have because I think it did an excellent job at being concise, but bringing up a lot of necessary topics and also code examples that just really just allow you to write very quickly. Uh, so it was a good book. So this author, I think the author's last name is Williams. I think I could be wrong. Um, but again, anyway, microservice patterns in .NET, I think is the title of the book. I could be wrong again, but he wrote another one about memory management in .NET, and if because I liked his first book, I think I would guess that I would like this memory management book. But it's a topic that I haven't gotten super deep into, and I haven't posted much. I haven't posted any content about it on this channel, and I think it's gonna be pertinent for the system design series because as we continually add uh, connections to either our queues or we're adding WebSocket connections to the front end, or we're doing all these things, and we're continually adding in stuff into our API. I think it would be neat to incorporate some look at, how do we do a diagnostic session in Visual Studio, or how do we look at how much memory is actually being used by our running application. And I think it would also be cool to compare .NET's memory management with the Rust application that we also have, because Rust is extremely memory efficient, and .NET, I think it'd be a neat comparison. Obviously, they're doing different functions, but I think it would still be neat to look at both of them. But memory management, the code, you can really go on a rabbit hole, down a rabbit hole in terms of like the type of code you write. Um, and it's pretty interesting. And I think that memory management gets kind of thrown by the wayside a lot of times when we have discussions about systems and programming. But it's a massive topic. Again, you could probably read several books about memory management and just scratch the surface. Garbage collection in .NET is a massive topic, and I think that the most common example that you will probably run into dealing with memory in .NET when you're just kind of looking through code examples is going to be the use of string builder. That seems to be, at least from what I've noticed, the thing that gets asked a lot of questions about. Because if we have to continually, create a new string and then append something to that string, and we're doing it inside a loop, that's an example of when to use string builder. But that seems to be the topic that's brought up, or the thing that's brought up the most is string builder. There's a number of other ones, but that one seems to be pretty popular and seems to be talked about a lot. I'm trying to think of what another one. Obviously, another one is disposing of resources. If a class implements iDisposable, that's that's a big topic. I tell you what, there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff that goes into that, and you'll I think see features that are being added into later versions, kind of helping us not have to directly interact with disposable, or dot dispose or things like that, because it's too easy to get that wrong, and then you have the potential to create a memory leak. Like if you forget to dispose of something, then the garbage collection never gets it. Then you start leaking memory, and that's that topic is not only hard to, I think, create a reproducible issue. I mean, you can, but it's just I'm gonna have to figure out what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna have to figure out a good example of like that on the channel, and then figure out how to talk about that, because I don't think that we're going to be doing memory management on this channel for a while. Not at least not until I get to that book and maybe another book. So it's probably not going to be for a while, maybe a year, maybe 6 months, or whatever it is. But it's definitely going to be coming. And yeah, it's interesting. Another book that I've really I really want to read, but I'm afraid that I'm gonna get it and not be interested in it, and I'm gonna like waste all this money on like buying like a borderline like textbook. Is It's a distributed systems book, and I'm afraid that it's going to be too. I'm afraid that it's going to be too like database heavy, and I'm afraid that I'm afraid I'm gonna get not like I'm just afraid I'm not gonna finish it. So I have to figure out when I want to read about that topic and do content on that. So I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot, but I think that those three books that are coming in, I'm very excited to read that RabbitMQ in action. I think that that's going to be a fun book to read because I think the topic's interesting. Um, but I'll make content on that as I'm kind of going through that. But that's kind of where I'm at in terms of books. That's what I'm reading. It's what I've read recently. So if you've read anything recently for programming, let me know. I'm always looking for books and content to talk about. So I'll see you in the next one.